This is Sean Thomas Radcliff. Welcome to another episode of Preservation Oaks. In this series, we introduce you to professionals from museums, cultural, genealogical, and historical societies across the United States. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the program. Good day, everyone. Thanks again for being here. We have another great program for you. Today we're hanging out with Jean Pemberton, Janet Kokko, and Donna Laux from the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum. If you haven't heard of South Range, Michigan, it's a super chill town in Houghton County, right in the breathtaking Upper Peninsula. It's been around since 1902 and it's home to about 750 awesome people. Nestled on the main street of this cozy town, you'll find the Copper Range Historical Museum, a hidden gem that you definitely need to check out. It's run by an amazing team of volunteers who are all about preserving the area's rich history. Think of it as a time capsule that shows how life used to be. By the end of this episode, you'll see why Jean, Janet, and Donna are so passionate about the Copper Range Historical Society. It's not just a museum. It's the heart of the community. It keeps local traditions alive and gives everybody a place to share stories and celebrate their heritage. Supporting the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum isn't just about looking back at the past. It's about investing in the future of the Copper Range. It helps with education, boosts the local economy, and deepens the understanding of the unique culture in the Copper Country. When you support the Society, you're helping to make sure that the rich history of this amazing place continues to inspire and educate people for generations. So if you're into cool stories, history, or just love being a part of something bigger, the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum is definitely worth your support. I'm Sean Thomas Radcliff, and I'm coming to you from Salt Lake City, and this is Preservation Oaks, the original talk program on MicroStream Radio, where we feature information about museums, cultural and heritage institutions, associations, historical and genealogical societies, and history-focused media creators across the United States. Our main platform is preservationoaks.podbean.com, but you can find us on nearly all podcast platforms, as well as Rumble, Getter, Minds, TikTok, Facebook, Odyssey, and YouTube. So wherever you listen to the program, I appreciate it very much when you like, comment, follow, or subscribe. If you're interested in being a guest on the program, or if you have questions or comments, please feel free to email us at preservationoaks@gmail.com. A big shout out to all of you who have been spreading the word about our program. Your support means the world to us. By helping us reach more people, you're shining a spotlight on the incredible heroes of Preservation Oaks and giving them the recognition they truly deserve. So thank you for being awesome. Unlike a lot of podcasts out there, we don't ask for money from our listeners. No, we do this because we love showcasing the amazing work of organizations who are our Preservation Oaks. These folks are the real-life heroes, dedicating themselves to protecting and preserving our history every single day. Our Preservation Oaks organizations and the people who volunteer and operate them are the superheroes of our nation, working tirelessly to safeguard our heritage and make sure future generations can learn from the past. And guess what? You can be a hero too, just by sharing our program and helping it grow. You're joining the mission to support these incredible efforts. So let's keep the momentum going, spread the word, Support your local society or museum, and together we can make sure our rich heritage is preserved for generations to come. Thanks for being a part of this amazing journey. All right, now let me tell you about the next episode of Preservation Oaks. We'll be hanging out with Ms. Holly Cordeal, the Executive Director of the Friends of Historic Meridian, located in Okemos, Michigan. Founded in 1974, the Friends of Historic Meridian is a nonprofit organization with the mission to create and sustain an active appreciation of local history. They operate 8 historic buildings, making up the Meridian Historical Village in the Central Park in Okemos. In addition to preserving and maintaining the historic structures in the Meridian Historical Village, they offer a variety of community outreach and educational programs. I'm really looking forward to learning more about the area, the historical village, and this wonderful organization on our next episode, so stay tuned. All right, that all being said, let's get this show snapping. Okay, here's a short biography of each of today's guests. First, let's meet Jean Pemberton, a champion of local history. Jean Pemberton is at the helm of the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum as its board president, based in South Range, Michigan. Born in Hancock and raised in Painesdale, she graduated from Jeffers High School. Jean's college days at Ferris Institute, now Ferris State University in Big Rapids, were where she met her husband John. With a bustling family of 4 adult sons and a growing clan of 5 grandsons, 1 granddaughter, and 6 great-grandchildren, Jean's life is rich with family connections. After 42 years in Michigan's Lower Peninsula, she and John retired to Dollar Bay, back to the heart of copper country, where Jean's roots run deep. Since 2002, Jean has been a key player at the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum. She's dedicated to keeping the local history of the range towns alive and vibrant for the next generation. She believes in the power of stories and the importance of knowing where you come from. Jean's family history is a part of the area's legacy. All 4 of her grandparents emigrated from Finland to copper country in the late 1800s and early 1900s, drawn to the region's bustling copper mining industry. They were loggers and farmers, contributing to the area's rich and diverse cultural fabric. In a place known for its blend of cultures, Jean is passionate about honoring and sharing these stories. She's all about keeping the past alive and making sure future generations understand and appreciate the unique heritage of the copper country. And now, a bio of Janet Kokko. Janet Kokko is a lifelong resident of South Range, Michigan. She began her education at South Range Elementary School and graduated from Jeffers High School. Janet continued her academic journey at Michigan Tech and later earned a master's degree in elementary education from Northern Michigan University. With a passion for teaching, Janet dedicated 38 years to educating young minds, primarily in the 4th, 5th, and 6th grades at Chazell Elementary School before retiring. Janet deeply cherishes the beauty of her hometown and the joy of each season. She embraces outdoor activities from snowshoeing in winter to hiking in summer, always finding a new adventure in nature. Her love for working with children remains strong, as does her enthusiasm for exploring local history and culture. Janet takes pride in her Finnish heritage and treasures her connections with cousins in Finland, constantly learning more about her roots. And now, a short bio of Donna Laux. Donna Laux was born in Hancock, located in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. She spent her early years in Donkin, a small lumbering town about 15 miles south of South Range. With brief stints in Marquette, where she attended Northern Michigan University, and a year in Detroit, Donna has primarily resided in Houghton County. Donna's mother transitioned from a school teacher to a stay-at-home mom, a common expectation for married women at the time. Her father worked as a logger and owned a sawmill, but as timber resources dwindled due to non-selective cutting practices, he shifted to road construction. Donna completed her schooling in Winona, a mining town, through 9th grade before graduating from Painesdale High School, also a mining community. Winona's school remains operational with only a handful of students, while both Donkin and Winona are now considered ghost towns. While attending Northern Michigan University, Donna met her future husband. Together they have 5 children, 6 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. Her husband had a varied career, working in construction, running a gas station, and later serving in the school district. Before they met, he briefly worked as a trammer in one of the last operational copper mines. Donna devoted 20 years as a stay-at-home mother, during which she managed rental properties. She then balanced work outside the home for another 2 decades, retiring from D&N Bank. Of English and Croatian descent, Donna's paternal great-grandparents emigrated from Cornwall, England, while her maternal grandparents hailed from Croatia, then part of Yugoslavia or Austria. Her maternal grandfather was a miner. A dedicated member of the Copper Range Historical Museum for 24 years, Donna has served as secretary and now holds the position of vice president. All right, and now on to this episode with the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum, where we can learn about things we never knew before and get inspired by these incredible ladies and their mission. Welcome to the program, Jean, Janet, and Donna.
Nice to be with you. This is Donna, and it's nice to be with you.
Thank you very much for being here. Folks, what are some notable architectural landmarks in the area that have historical significance?
This is Janet, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about the old Adams Township High School, which today is Jeffers High School. And why it changed names is that for 55 years, we had a husband and wife team, Fred and Cora Jeffers, that were the superintendent and principal. And so when they retired, the name of the school changed. So it is called Jeffers High School today. But when it started, it was Adams Township High School. So this building was in Painesdale, and it was designed by a very famous architect from Milwaukee. And his name was Mr. Elshweiler. And he was such a famous architect that this became a prime example of architecture of the period. It has been studied and it has been marveled by architectural anthropologists, included Ian Hoagland of Michigan Technological University. And it was built in 1908 and 1909 with the cost being $100,000.
Wow.
And this building was voted in on an election of April of 1907 by 12 people, and they all voted yes. It is 140 feet in length, and it is made of rough cut sandstone, which came from Jacobsville, where it was quarried. And its interior is very beautiful today. Even you would see this. It has granite, marble, and tile. And there are shaped parapets on each end. It has a symmetrical facade, and it is a majestic presence in a mining town. And today it still is beautiful. And when you look out the windows, you can see the Huron Mountains. It is absolutely gorgeous, especially in the fall time when you see the colored leaves.
Oh, wonderful. Is it on the National Register at all?
Well, the town of Painesdale is. I don't know about the school itself.
Boy, that sounds beautiful.
But, I was just there yesterday. This is Jean. And I was at the school yesterday with 6 members of my class of 1958 who live here locally. And we got a tour of the building as it is now. And the swimming pool is as beautiful as ever. And the old terrazzo floors. But they've added on to the school too. So the old building is there and the new part, and it's all being well used.
Wow, that really sounds wonderful.
Yes.
It was the only school in the Copper Country at one time that had a swimming pool.
It's very touching that you named the school after the Jeffreys, who cared for everything for 55 years.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And what role did women play in the history of Copper Range, both in the mining industry and the community?
This is Donna, and I'm going to address it through my own experience, which was my grandmother. the men worked very hard in the mine, very dangerous work, but the women worked even harder. From the time they got up in the morning until they put their feet off the floor to go to bed, they worked all day. My grandmother, immigrating from Yugoslavia at the age of 18, often told a story how she had babies, they had their children, but there was no running water. And they had to have boarders in those days. So not only were you taking care of your home, you were also taking care of boarders, and sometimes they were around the clock. They worked in shifts. And my grandmother said after she had a child, she simply wrapped a towel around her midsection and went back to work.
Oh, my goodness.
And that was a little example of life was not easy for women, but they were eager to bring women to this area at that time because women brought refinement, and the men had a place to go at the end of the day, and they brought religion and culture to the area.
Yeah.
So women played a vital role in developing this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Why were there so many boarders?
Because there wasn't enough housing for everybody. So there were times that they had to work in shifts. One of the areas that my grandmother had lived in at one time, she had two babies of her own, and it was called Old Victoria, which isn't in Houghton County, it's in Okanagan, but that's where they originally settled. And we took her there. It's now a historic, it's been preserved and it's historic. And when we brought her to that Old Victoria, she didn't want to get out of the car.
Oh.
This is quite a few years ago when she was still living. And she said, I don't even want to look at it. She said life was so hard there with raising these two babies that she had, the boarders, and they had to carry water, and it was a long distance. There was no indoor plumbing, and the heat and the cooking and the washing clothes for these boarders. It was a difficult life.
Oh, yeah. You had to carry your water. Oh, that's terrible.
And she said the homes, they look nice now. She said they didn't look this nice back then. When we finally convinced her that she could get out of the car to look at it.
Yeah, we can thank the women for all of the refinements in society, that's for sure. Especially in a place where there's lots of mining activity, lots of men, lots of work going on. Women were desperately needed.
Yes.
And she came here at 18 years old. My grandfather had come before her. And this was part of this mining era where they needed this help in the mines. And she said she had only seen him twice in Yugoslavia or Croatia or Austria, whichever it was at that time. So she came here and married him, and she said it was like marrying a stranger.
Oh, wow.
But it wasn't easy. She said it was very difficult.
I'm so glad you got to capture those stories. That's wonderful. Now, how do you go about preserving and restoring historical sites and artifacts in Copper Range?
Jean here, I have a list of sort of overview of what we have here in the museum. It's items like mining, a cabinet, a display cabinet full of mining memorabilia from the Copper Range Mining Company in Painesdale and other area ones at the time. We have Copper Range Railroad and a ceremonial spike that was used when that railroad was connected to the Mineral Range Railroad. And the railroad was needed so that mining companies could deliver the copper to the smelters to the shores of Lake Superior. We had part of the train was a school train, which we'll refer to later. We have a replica of a mining house that the man had grown up in the South Range area. So he had built a replica of the house that he had grown up in, which was a typical mining house, what we be a duplex today, or when we lived in one in Painesdale, we called it a double house, but they have their names in different areas. We have an old display here of mailboxes that were at a local town, the old-fashioned kind, and so they're old post office mail slots. And we have a what's it table where that's one place where kids or anyone could touch the stuff on there. It's a little game that's numbered and you guess what the items are. We have a loom for carpet making And there's an old copper washing machine. There's a glass case that has copper items showing what nice items that were made out of copper. But we have a 300-pound float copper from someone's yard nearby. And that was brought here by a moving company because it was so heavy. Family had found it in their yard. We have a sports display because sports were a very important part of the recreation for the area, especially baseball, softball, but hockey. Those were really big deals, especially back in the 30s, 40s, 50s. We have what's called a stereoscope. It's the one that you can look at pictures in this device, like before the Viewmasters and today's phones that you can look at. And it's a fun thing to look at. There's a lot of children's items. There's a treadle sewing machine. And these are all items that were used from years ago. And we have them here on display for visitors to see and reminisce or ask questions about because they'd never seen it before and wondered what it is. There was a lot of polka music here. Popular polka bands like Frankie Yankovic from Pennsylvania. He came here quite often and performed. Anyone that's into polka music, they will recognize some of these names, whether they're local or famous. We have photography, a logging display, a general store based on 1913 era. We have old egg beaters. It's amazing old egg beaters that we never saw before that were used. And a lot of hats and things, so that's sort of an overview of what we have in our display to preserve, to answer your question.
Thank you for that very much. Do you curate those items? In other words, do you treat them with anything to preserve them through the ages, or does the metal continue to rust, or how do you go about making sure that they stay in good shape?
Well, they're staying in good shape. They're when they're dusty, maybe we'll dust it from time to time.
This is Donna, and our building is heated throughout the winter months,
okay.
Which helps to retard rust to develop. If we had more humidity here, we probably would have more decay, but we keep it heated all winter.
Okay.
And this is Gina, even what's in our basement is old stuff that it looks very rusty just because of what it was used at the mine, but we've never embellished it or anything, and it's there just in storage.
Wow. It's all temperature controlled and you're taking care and preserving everything properly. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this whole area, Copper Range, was a mining area. And at one time, there were a lot of mines. This is a bustling place with lots of activity and work going on, mines everywhere, and people underground digging copper. And at some point, that starts diminishing and copper mines start closing and things start happening where the communities become degraded because the mines are closing. What was the impact of that on your way of life?
My grandparents ended up living in Winona, which is where I went to school through the 9th grade. And coincidentally, that school is still open with 5 or 6 students this year. But the town, it was the main town of Winona, which this is about 18 miles south of South Range. There was King Philip, and we've been there in the spring of the year, my husband and I, and there was house upon house. And then there was the main area and you had stores, barbershops, a community, the school, and currently the population there is 14. The houses are mostly gone. There's maybe a few left. In my case, before the mines closed, even my grandfather came down with what they called consumption.
Oh, yeah.
So when the mine did close, he wasn't able to move away or find work in the woods. They stayed. And the oldest male in the family, which was my mother's brother, he had to quit his job or quit going to school to get a job to support the family. And then after he passed, And it was during World War II. A lot of them, they immigrated to the Detroit area because by then the Ford Motor Company and General Motors and was booming in Lower Michigan. So they went there. And my grandmother didn't join them until after her husband died, my grandfather, and that was before I was born. And there were two of the children that stayed, my mother being one of them, and my uncle, one that ended up quitting school to go to work, remained. And that's an example of from a booming town to now has 14 people there and basically a ghost town.
Yeah.
And Jean here, thinking of when you were referring also to the mines closing, good share of them were closed by the 1960s. And I recall it did affect the economy here a lot. It was an economically depressed area for quite a while.
How has tourism evolved in Copper Range, and what draws visitors to its historical sites today?
This is Janet, and I think tourism has a lot to do with our 4 seasons. It is incredible the amount of people that come up here in the winter to snowmobile. We have the Bill Nichols Trail that goes through here, and there are young people and older people that use this trail very often. One of our newer places to eat in town has been chosen or cited as being one of the favorite restaurants in the area for people to stop, which is really good. People love to come in the fall to see our beautiful leaves. We have so many places to go that are next to Lake Superior or in the country where you can just, it's just gorgeous. You'll have to come and see them.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to. No doubt about it. So do you have any idea how many visitors come annually?
Thousands.
Jean here, thousands, really. Yeah, it's we're a destination place, and the word little by little is getting out, and so it's bringing a lot of tourists up here year round. What was the mining era now is history, and so a lot of your tourists enjoy seeing the old mining areas, whether it's here in southern Houghton County or north of Houghton and Hancock up to Calumet, but it has become a big tourist area. So that's one of the biggest businesses now in this area is tourism, but there's still a lot of logging, a lot of technology, Michigan Tech. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of Michigan Tech students that like it so well here that when they graduate, they stay, even if they don't stay in their profession, because they like this. And then there's other ones that come here and they can't wait to get out of here when the winter gets a little much.
Oh, yeah, you've got hard winters sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Junior, not this year. We had a very mild winter, so to speak, but it doesn't happen that often.
So there
This
must
is
be.
Donna.
Oh, go ahead, Donna.
Actually, our mild winter was very hard on our area because winter tourism actually exceeds summer tourism, which used to be the most popular. Recently spoke with someone who has a resort, and he said, we're booked normally. It's just constant flow of tourism in the winter. But this mild winter was very difficult on that industry.
This is Janet. Mount Bohemia was just developed here not too long ago, and there is a great amount of people who come to do backcountry skiing. They really enjoy it. Cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, going hiking in the winter, those are all fun things for people.
Jean here, a lot of people that come here now have family roots, and they're researching it more than they used to. And then there are people who visit us from anywhere in the country. They see us online or on the map or something, and they come up here and tour the area. And so we get visitors in that way. And then there's other ones that are researching their past, or they remember coming up here in the summer and spending time with their grandparents or relatives. And now they loved it here and they wanted to come back up here to just be here. And many of them have moved back up here.
This is Janet, and I just wanted to tell you that there are many ethnic, colorful times that people have had in the past where they've gotten together and had a celebration. Like in Hancock, every year in January, there's what we call Hakenväva, and it's a Finnish event, and it's celebrating the breaking of the back of winter. And there are fun events that take place, and some of them are pretty silly, but it's very much enjoyed by the people who come here, and they have times where they do Finnish baking, and they have Finnish crafts, Finnish playing of the guntale, an instrument that is a beautiful instrument, string instrument, and it's just a fun time to have. And then when we get to midsummer up here, we also have another Finnish time that can be spent together out at a lake, and this is called Juhannus, and this is St. John's Day. And actually, my last name is Kokko, and it means a bonfire on St. John's Day. And the Finnish people would go and they would put and make big bonfires to celebrate midsummer, saying that summer is a wonderful time of year. And it's a fun time. We've had FinFest up here where we've had people from Finland who have come and did singing at Juhannus, and it was wonderful. The FinFests up here are really great. They take place in many parts of the country where Finnish people live.
This is Jean, and one thought about the St. John's Day, the Juhannus celebration in Finland is celebrated there also because it's the longest day of the year. The sun doesn't set. Alaska can tell you the same story, any of the northern hemispheres. And so it's just a tradition that the Finnish people have here in our area, as well as Minnesota or wherever else they settled.
And on that day, we have an equal amount of hours for darkness and light. Yes. So it's that day.
Wow. That is a wonderful heritage. Wow. That is very cool.
This is, Sean, one thing too about the daylight, that it's still daylight, well, not bright, but it's still light after 10 o'clock at night here.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is Janet. At 10:30 last night when I went to bed, I looked out the window and I could still see part of the sunset, the afterglow.
This is Donna again on the lake where we are. And this summer on July 3rd, they have a boat parade. And the boat parade starts at 10:45 so that we can see the lights on the boats.
Oh, my goodness. Wow, what a wonderful place.
Yes.
So you must have in the area a lot of bed and breakfasts, a lot of hotels, because all of those tourists have to stay somewhere, right?
The Jean here, yes. Airbnbs have become even more popular. There's a lot of your older homes that people are buying them and fixing them up and renting them out as Airbnb. But yes, there are bed and breakfasts. There's a lot of motels, but they still run into a housing problem here. It's something, I guess, that we're getting used to.
Yeah, it's in the 21st century now, people, because of technology, because of the internet, and because it has allowed us to pretty much work from anywhere, depending on the type of job you have, and people can just relocate anywhere they want. So maybe your area is coming back now partially because of that.
Yes.
That's very true. And this is Donna. That's true. A lot of the students that graduate from Michigan Technological University, they love the area and they are able to, work from home.
Yeah.
Start their own businesses.
And yes, right.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay. I'm glad it's coming back. And you said, Jean, I think it was the 1960s when the mines started closing down.
Jean, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks for that. Now, what is Copper Range? So you are the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum, but what is the Copper Range?
Well, this is Jean. Copper mining was the main reason why this area got settled. The spine of the Keweenaw Peninsula that juts out into Lake Superior has some very rich native copper in it. And so finance people from Boston and Philadelphia, they got wind of this mining here because people that came ahead learned how the Indians, the Native Americans were finding copper here and mining it. And so the word got back. And so they started investing money in this area. And so a good share of it would be up in Calumet, the Calumet and Hecla mine, and in Hancock, the Quincy mine. There's a bridge that connects Houghton and Hancock, the Portage Canal, Portage Waterway. And so those were the big employers up there. Well, then south of, in southern Houghton County, where we are located, was the Copper Range Mining Company, which was the big employer down in this area. And so somehow the name for these range towns of southern Houghton County, like South Range, Painesville, Trimountain, Atlantic Mine, they became called the Copper Range. And so the founders of the society named us the Copper Range Historical Society.
So the Copper Range is really a part of our country where there was a huge amount of copper mines in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan on the Keweenaw Peninsula, and that's what's known as the Copper Range, and it encompasses a lot of different communities.
Yes.
John, this is Donna, and Jean has touched on it, that it's in the Keweenaw, and I believe it goes as far as Ironwood. But we were given the name of the Copper Range, and of course, the Copper Range Company owned a lot of the mines. And I'm going to tell you a little story of my own. In 1980, my husband and our sons built a little log cabin about 18 miles south of South Range on an inland lake called Twin Lakes, and the lake we're on is called Lake Roland. And we had a man come over because we were doing this cabin by ourselves. And we called it a divining rod, and there are other people who have other names for this, where he came with this metal hole that he had made, and it's on a stick, and somehow or another, when you get near water, it will bend down. Oh. And he did it very, very quickly. And he said, if you go any further than a certain amount of feet, you're going to miss where these two springs intersect, because these lakes are spring-fed lakes. So that's where we dug, and went exactly as far as he said, and we found water. And then as my husband and the boys were cleaning up the sand that they pulled out of this hole, they came across a piece of copper. And that was kind of fascinating, because we alluded to before that you will find float copper from time to time here. In fact, when we built our home here in Atlantic Mine, we had a huge piece of float copper that we found. So we took this piece of copper that we found, and I was using it once in a while to pound something. And then my husband took a metal detector, and he was on the beach, and he came up with another piece of copper, but this was real raw copper. And after this was a few years went by, and I was looking at this first piece of copper we found from digging the well, and I said, this copper has been formed. So we took the piece of copper home, and during the winter months, we have two professors from Michigan Tech, PhDs, and they came to our house, and they measured the piece that we brought, and we brought both pieces, and they took pictures of it. And then they said to us, how old do you think this piece of copper is? And I said, I don't know, maybe 500 years. And they said, how about 5,000 years plus?
Whoa. And
actually, they said this was brought here by the Native Americans or Indians, and they usually would camp at the mouth of a river, near the mouth of a river, on a high point, within walking distance to a mine, because that's how the mines actually were first discovered here. The Native Americans, they would find copper, and then they would dig down further and find even more. So when they described in the middle of the winter this spot where they would camp and work out of, I said, well, you just described our camp. And so I have this Indian artifact now, and I always thought it was an interesting little story.
It's a beautiful story. What is it shaped like? You mentioned that the copper was shaped.
Well, it was not a weapon. They said they thought, and or were sure, they knew, they were very knowledgeable about this. They had their doctorates. And they said it was a tool, which is actually what I had been using it for, as a tool.
That's amazing. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So this Copper Range area is quite large, but you guys, the museum, the society is located in South Range, a town called South Range, Michigan. And so what's the history of South Range?
This is Janet. I can tell you a little bit of the history of South Range. It started off a long time ago when the Wheel Hate Mining Company was looking for copper, and they went up into the hills, which we call Wilkate Bluff in South Range, looked around for copper, but they really did not find any. So this company decided to sell their property to any new immigrants that were working in the nearby mines in Atlantic and Baltic and Ainsdale. And they were telling people, then you could build your own home. And so these people were sold plots of land. So the village of South Range was never designed as a mining town. It was designed to serve as a business center and a residential hub for the miners in the area. So the village was plotted, and they were going to call it Stanton, but there was another Stanton in Michigan, so they decided they would call it South Range. So people then had their own property, and businesses were started to be created, and the streets were laid out in 1903 so that we had east and west and north and south streets. And so we didn't have the kind of streets like you would have in Atlantic Mine or Painesdale or Baltic that are kind of twisted around in many places. They are avenues and streets, very easy to find around. One of the earliest buildings here was our South Range State Bank, which was in 1903. And this town was incorporated, and we had a water supply, but the first water supply was not good. They built a dam outside of the village, and there wasn't enough water to come from there. So that was kind of not good. And so they had to connect up to the Baltic mine to get enough water.
Oh, wow.
And so a sewer system was laid out, and a fire department was put in. And one other thing that was most interesting is there was really no ethnic part of the town. There were people who picked out their property, and whoever lived next to you, if you wanted to be by your friend, perhaps you bought next to them and perhaps you didn't. And one little story I thought I would tell you is that my grandmother or my grandfather, Henry Kokko, built his house on 2nd Street in South Range, and he was going to rent out the top to start off with until their family grew, and then they had many children, so they were staying there. But 2 houses down was an Italian woman, and she was very interested in farming, as was my grandmother. And so they would somehow or another communicate with their hands and talk and show each other what they were doing. And I thought that was most amusing to hear. People in South Range could have places where they could have chickens, you could have a garden. There were some who had barns. I understand some people had cows, and so they could sell some of their goods to help in the restaurants and so on that were here. And so there was boarding houses again that were here to start off with. One thing that I found that was very interesting that I had never heard of before was that the boarding boss was going to take care of his occupants. And so if one of them got into some kind of financial trouble or whatever in town, the boarding boss would pay for him to get out of whatever problem he had, and then he would pay him back. And likewise, if the boarding house boss got into some kind of a trouble, whatever, that the people that were living there would do the same thing and help him out till he could get back on and doing whatever he could. So I never read any stories about it, but that's what I heard.
Huh.
And so there was a hotel, there was a general merchandise store. Many, many people owned their own homes. So between 1927 and 1950, there were barbers, bakers, grocers, tailors, dentists, confectioners, photographers, jewelers, blacksmith people, shoe repairers, people working in the bank, and even a movie theater.
Wow.
So our town.
That was a bustling place, I'll tell you. And hopefully it still is today.
This is Donna. Janet hit on something about the water supply. And I don't know when they found this, or what level they were at in the Painesdale mine, but they hit water and they didn't know where it was coming from, but it kept coming and coming. And currently, Painesdale, Trimountain, Atlantic Mine, South Range, Hancock, and Houghton used to. And there are other, here in town, Dodgeville. That mine has supplied water all these years.
And still does.
And still does. We all still receive that water, and they actually don't know where it's coming from.
Wow.
This is Janet, and our person who's in charge of our township told us at a meeting that our water was voted the best water out of all of the places that were looked at. I believe it was even through many states that it was the purest water. So we enjoy our drinking water here very much.
Well, for tourists out there, just come for the water. It's great.
This is Donna. And the pumps are still maintained at the Painesdale mine that pumps that water out. They don't know if the water has found its way from Lake Superior, or is it a type of underwater lake? Whatever they hit, it's never stopped.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, it's time for a break for a few minutes. All right, listeners, we'll be right back after these important messages.
Imagine a time when copper was king and the bustling communities of Michigan's copper country were the heartbeat of America's industrial might. On the Keweenaw Peninsula in South Range, Michigan, the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum proudly preserves these remarkable stories and treasures. They're dedicated to keeping the spirit and heritage of copper country alive for everyone to explore and enjoy. The museum is a treasure trove of artifacts and exhibits that tell the tale of the people who lived, worked, and thrived there. From the hardworking miners to the families who built their lives around the copper mines, their stories are woven into the fabric of our community.
I remember when the mines were bustling. We were a tight-knit community, always supporting each other.
These memories and histories are priceless, and they need your help to keep them alive. Your donations are vital for them to continue the mission. Every contribution, no matter the size, makes a significant impact. It helps them maintain the exhibits, offer educational programs, and preserve the unique heritage of the Keweenaw Peninsula and Copper Country for future generations. Giving is easy. You can visit them online at pasty.com/CRHM. The website is filled with ways you can support, from one-time donations to becoming a sustaining member. You can also follow them on Facebook to stay updated on all their great events and activities.
I loved seeing the old mining equipment. It was like stepping back in time.
Your support helps them bring history to life for children and families. It's not just about the past, it's about inspiring curiosity and learning in everyone who visits. And if you prefer the personal touch, we'd love to see you at 44 Trimountain Avenue in South Range, or you can mail your donations to P.O. Box 148, South Range, Michigan, 49963. They're more than just a museum, they're a cornerstone of the community. By supporting the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum, you're helping to keep the shared history vibrant and accessible. Whether it's preserving a piece of mining equipment, hosting a local history talk, or running a community event, your generosity makes all the difference.
Volunteering here has been incredible. It's amazing to see how much people care about our history.
Join them in making a lasting impact. For more information or to find out how you can get involved, email them at copperrangehistoricalsociety@gmail.com. Together, we can ensure the rich legacy of the Keweenaw Peninsula and Copper Country continues to shine brightly for generations to come.
The Copper Range Historical Society and Museum, preserving the past, enriching the present, and inspiring the future. Thank you for your generous support.
Nothing to do? Feeling bored and blue? Well, we've got just the thing for you. Tune into Preservation Oaks at preservationoaks.podbean.com and unlock a world of wonders waiting for you.
Step into a realm of endless listening pleasure with each and every episode of Preservation Oaks. From fascinating locations to captivating topics and history galore, you'll be hooked from the start and talking about it tomorrow.
Don't miss out on this amazing opportunity. Follow us now at preservationoaks.podbean.com to get notified instantly whenever a new episode drops.
That's right. Jump over to preservationoaks.podbean.com and treat yourself to an array of excellent episodes. You'll have an almost inexhaustible supply of great information right at your fingertips.
And there's more. Every other week, a brand new episode will drop and grace your ears. Exclusive interviews, intriguing history, and special topics will keep you coming back for more.
Find Preservation Oaks on almost every podcast and social media platform worldwide. We bring you unique perspectives, engaging discussions, and everything you need to learn about museums, cultural and heritage institutions, historical and genealogical societies, and history-focused media creators across the United States.
Get ready for an extraordinary listening experience. With interesting guests, captivating topics, fantastic book reviews to aid your family history journey, and special history-focused media creators, you won't be able to stop listening.
So, don't wait any longer. Head over to preservationoaks.podbean.com and indulge in the luxury and convenience of dozens of episodes ready for you to enjoy.
Preservation Oaks is here to enrich the world and help you to keep on giving and keep on living the good life.
Preservation Oaks Podcast, your gateway to history, culture, and fascinating stories. Follow us now at preservationoaks.podbean.com and open the door to a whole new world of knowledge and entertainment.
This is Kirk Dillon, a friend of Sean Radcliffe's. Preservation Oaks brings you unbeatable information about museums, cultural, heritage, historical, and genealogical societies across the United States. It is a most enjoyable program that enables the public to look under the covers, as it were, and to feel completely comfortable with their decision to donate, join, volunteer with and support their organization of choice. I strongly encourage you all to give 3 cheers to the unsung heroes that are our nation's Preservation Oaks, for the hard work they do at your local society. It's very important work that really must be done properly, with everyone in the community helping as much as possible. Please follow, like, and listen to each episode of Preservation Oaks, but much more importantly, do please join, donate, and volunteer at one or more of your local societies. Thank you very much.
You're listening to Preservation Oaks on MicroStream Radio. If you enjoy the show, then please tell all your friends, family, neighbors, pals, acquaintances, business associates, colleagues, and maybe a couple of enemies about the show. Stay tuned for more episodes at www.preservationoaks.podbean.com. We thank you so much for spreading the love.
Please consider supporting your local museum, historical, or genealogical society. For the price of a pet armadillo, a mango, or a small pizza per month, you can support them so they can continue their mission within the community. And if you join as a member and volunteer, you can have a lot of fun helping and learning. It's a win-win. Thank you.
Welcome back to Preservation Oaks. I'm your host, John Thomas Radcliffe, and we're here today with some very special guests from the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum, located in South Range, Michigan, the Keweenaw portion of the Upper Peninsula. Ladies, let's pick up where we left off, and welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jean here.
Okay, so what we were talking about was South Range. What unique challenges or opportunities do you face in safeguarding your South Range's heritage?
Jean here, just keeping people aware that the museum exists and why we do. We encourage our locals to be a tourist in their hometown and visit the museum. And so it's a challenge of just trying to keep our name out there that we exist and that please come and learn the history of our area, our towns.
This is Janet, and one unique challenge I think that we had is before M26 went right past our museum and the highway was changed. And so the museum is not on a major highway. So it's very interesting to me that when I've been the docent here, that there have been people that told me they were just driving by and stopped in to see the museum. And I think that's wonderful.
I hope you guys have a big billboard up on the highway.
This is Jean. There are two signs, one from the north and one from the south. Being a Keweenaw heritage site of the Keweenaw National Historical Park, they have signs in the areas wherever there is a heritage site. And so along the highway M26 is what was rerouted from being past the museum. There is a sign that refers to our museum exists. And there's been a number of people who have come here because they saw the sign.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Mm-hmm. What are some intriguing lesser-known stories from South Range's history that your organization showcases?
This is Janet, and I'd like to tell you about our school train. It was the only school train that was ever in the United States during the time of the Copper Range. And so I'd like to tell you a little bit about why it was made and about some of the fun stories and a little bit about how it worked. So Jean and I ended up with this program because we are part of the Copper Range Heritage Center, and we were asked to do something about the history of South Range as all the other heritages were. And then we were to take part in a program one day in the park for fourth graders for copper traces. And what the teachers did is they prepared a program that would take about a half hour, and we would have it planned and we would advertise it to the other fourth graders all the way in our area. And one day was set aside in the park that we could do these programs where kids move from place to place, and a meal was planned for them. And it was made so that children could get excited about the history of different places. So in some places you made things, in some places you did much moving around to show, what was going on at the time. There were some parts that had to do with people who were in the theater and showing the different kinds of costumes. And so it just depended on where you were at. So we did the school train, and I wrote the program for here, so I'll tell you a little bit about it. So we asked the kids if they'd ever been on a train. And so few kids said yes, not too many of them did. And so we said, well, we're going to pretend we're riding on the school train. But first we have to tell you a little bit about the Copper Range. So 125 years ago, when the Copper Range Company was formed, way back then, the South Range had copper, but there was no way to get it out because the land looked like a low range of rocky and rugged mountains with ravines that were cut between them. And we showed the kids what a ravine looked like by just using our hands. Now, a surveyor, one who measures and lays out the land for the railroad tracks, worked with the men in the winter. Can you imagine working in the winter here with all of the snow? Well, guess how they got around? Back then, with snowshoes. And guess where they slept? They slept in tents, and their beds were made with branches from the fir boughs. Their jobs were to chop the trees and shovel the snow. They often had frozen noses and ears that must have hurt. So the timber needed clearing, and valuable wood, which could have been sold, unfortunately had to be burned down because there was no quick way to get it back to Houghton. When they moved the rocks, gravel, and sand, they had to use wheelbarrows, and they used them in the swamps also. If you needed a bridge, they had to make it out of wood because steel could not be brought in where it was needed, except later on when they built the fire steel bridges, which took much steel. And steel did arrive from South Chicago to lay these tracks. So in 14 miles, 10 million pounds of steel was laid. 3,000 men came to work, and 25 to 30 of these had free transportation. But you wouldn't guess what happened the next day. All but 2 or 3 of these people who had their way paid for free had disappeared. So around 900 men received $2 a day for their work, while those having a team of horses received $4.50. There were, on the average, 300 teams working then during the summer. So by December 27th of 1899, the tracks went from Houghton to Mass City. And then there was a wonderful thing that happened. At 2:10 p.m. during a howling blizzard, the last spike was driven into the Copper Range Railroad. So Chief Engineer Thomas Appleton was going to drive in the spike that was made from native float copper found in a grading near Houghton. And the spike was made at a machine shop just out of Houghton. Unfortunately, not many observed this because it was such a terrible day. The place where the spike was driven in was about 35 miles from Houghton and 1/2 miles this side of the fire steel bridges. This copper spike was withdrawn and presented to William Payne, who was the president of the company. And now all points on the north and south ranges were connected by 1903. So we have this copper spike here at our museum, and so we invited the kids to come. It's a wonderful spike that we have on loan here. So we showed the kids the names of all the mines. We had a map, and the kids went and located the mines. And then we asked, why in the world do you think a school administrator would want to have the kids ride a train to school? Because now this high school in Adams Township was finished. Well, we asked them to think about the land and what it was like. And we asked them, what is it like in the spring? And they said muddy. How about the winter? Snowy. How would they get to school? And some of them said, well, maybe they walked, maybe they went on a sleigh, or maybe they went on a buggy that was pulled by a horse. So they said, wouldn't it be easier to ride a train every day without ever giving you a snow day? And so there never, ever was a day that was a snow day, because the train did have, there was a special locomotive that went through that cleared the snow, and so that the train always got through. So with this new high school in 1909, the superintendent wanted more students to come, not just from Painesdale, and so the train would be a good way to get them there. So they were going to do $3,000 being budgeted to get the train transportation. And then the people from Stanton Township, which is up by Lake Superior, and they would also be able to come to Painesdale. So the train left from Houghton at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it dropped an empty coach in Atlantic Mine. Then the train turned west and it traveled 20 miles to Freda, and then it returned to Mill Mine Junction. And of course, this train coach that was left there in Atlantic Mine needed to be heated, so somebody was there to heat it. Then they left the car on a side track, so we had to show them what a side track was. There was a branch off of the main track of the railroad, and this coach backed up to Atlantic Mine. It picked up the students there, returned to Mill Mine Junction, which was a point that was between Atlantic Mine and where you would head off to going towards Lake Superior. and picked up the students and went on to South Range and Baltimore. And they bypassed Trimountain because they said the students could walk. So some of them had to walk to school. So they got to Painesdale, and when we asked them, well, what do you think the train did there all day? Well, the engine was unhitched and it hauled copper ore to the stamp mills out on Lake Superior, while the coaches remained on the coal dock until the end of the day. And the train hooked up 30 to 35 rock cars filled with copper ore. Now, these coaches, they were painted a dull brown and they were made of wood. They were 52 feet long, had 8 wheels, and had 15 windows on each side. And they possibly had seats that you could turn around to face each other. They were cloth-covered seats with an armrest that was highly decorated. So about 62 students could fit on the coach, and it was heated by a coal stove on each end, and a kerosene lamp was lighting the coach. There was a worker who made sure the coach was heated, and the conductor watched over the coach. So we had our students, so that they could see what it was like, we had them divide into groups, and we had them put it into the 4 different cars to go back home, and we saw how they were going to end up in their right places. So we told them that they could enjoy their trip home. So we talked to them and we said, okay, now, what do you think you talked about or did on the train? And some of them, they had to think for a long time. So we came up with some ideas. And of course, I was reading about some students that said that the teachers gave lots of homework, so they had time to do their homework. But other kids liked to play cards, or they talked about what they were going to do when they got home, or on the weekend if they went to go skating somewhere or be on go with their hockey team, or if they were going to do any sewing or helping with any things that would be on their farms or where they were going. So the kids had fun telling their stories, and then we asked them when they came back what they were going to tell. And so they had an interesting time as they were going to be left off as they went from coming. It was just the opposite of what they did when they went there. So when they got there at the end, we also told them after they were all taken care of that there were some funny stories that went on. One family had a pet crow, and when a group of friends heard the whistle, they headed to Stanwood, and the crow landed on the lower branches of a tree and pestered the dogs that were following. And when the kids caught up, the crow flew forward with the dogs barking. And as they approached the depot, the crow waited on the roof until the train left. Now, my uncle went on the school train, and he didn't like getting up in the morning. And so he listened for when the train would whistle outside of Atlantic and Mill Mine, and he would hurry up and get out of bed and hurry up and grab his lunchbox and go, and he would get on the train. There was a photograph that was in the South Range Depot, and the students sometimes got to touch or see how it worked. Later, we know that in the summertime, grapes were delivered in boxcars to people in South Range or other places that wanted them. And especially the Italians like to get these grapes. So we gave grapes to the kids to show them that this was something that took place. And kids on their way home threw out their apple cores. And so guess what's growing along there today? There are many, many apple trees, and I can tell you that they were good apples because going out there to play, they were wonderful apples. In Stanwood, one of their places where the students waited for the train, they said they had 3 foot of snow that entered their building before they got there. And sometimes the kids said the train was late when they were, when they dropped the students off in Atlantic and then came back to pick them up, that sometimes they were late getting home. And so they always liked to save some of their lunch. And when they left the high school, very different from today, when they were in their assembly hall, someone played the piano and the students walked out quietly, single file to get their coats and then walk down to the train, which was down a hill, and got on the train to go home. And we heard that the children were very well behaved on the train and people were there to watch. So this is a little bit.
Yeah, it was. This is Jean. One thing, there are no trains in operation up in the Keweenaw Peninsula at all anymore. But where the tracks used to be are now used as snowmobile trails, and in the summer, side-by-side and ATV trails.
Okay, what a wonderful story. Wow, what a history. And there's none of that track, none of the trains are left and been preserved?
Well, one thing we've learned is that one of the passenger cars that the students rode in is now at a railroad museum in I think it's North Freedom or New Freedom, Wisconsin.
Yeah, North Freedom, Wisconsin. This is coach number 60.
Yeah, and that train car has been restored for the public to visit.
Oh my goodness, wow. Wow, amazing. That's a great story. What a life those kids had.
Yes.
Now, how did your museum and society start? What's the history of that?
This is Jean. I can read a little bit of it here. I have printed out the report from the first annual meeting of the society on July 6th of 1989. It was held here in South Range. And it says that our society received incorporation as a nonprofit from the state of Michigan on October 8th, 1988, and exempt from the IRS on April 10th of 1989. The principal region of the society is in the mining communities, some of which Janet has mentioned, like Atlantic Mine, Baltics, Painesdale, South Range, Trimountain, and some mill towns by Lake Superior. One comment about the town of Painesdale. The town of Painesdale was named after the Payne family. He was the president of the Copper Range Mining Company, but they were from Boston, Massachusetts area. And if anyone's heard of a financial company called Payne and Weber, it's of that Payne family.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have heard of them.
Yeah. And so that ceremonial spike that Janet talked about, that was on that blizzard day when the Copper Range Railroad combined with the Mineral Range Railroad, that ceremonial spike is the one that was given to William Payne. And so his family has given us to display. It's on loan from the Payne family. So we're honored to have it. It's engraved with the engineer and the date and all kinds of information. So anyway, going back to the formation of our society here in South Range, like we're in Southern Houghton County. Okay, it coincides with what was then called the Calumet Historic Parks, which is now known as the Keweenaw National Historic Park. The formation of this society here in South Range was important because the one in Calumet, the Department of Interior, their area of responsibility is up in Calumet with the former Calumet and Heckle mine, and in Hancock at the Quincy mines. Those were the big employers up there. And so the people that formed our society felt that we need to have the Copper Range Mining Company also historical properties preserved. And so they started working out also with that Champion No. 4 shaft house in Painesdale, which is the only remaining structure of its kind on the south side of Portage Lake. And then there was a pay office and some other buildings there that still were standing there back in 1989. Okay, and so at first it was going to be the museum as we have it here and the one in Painesdale. But then as time went on, they realized that it was too much of an undertaking for the one in Painesdale. So they broke away from that. And so that Painesdale mine, Champion No. 4, was sort of left unattended. But then another group formed that one. And so today it's a very active organization called the Painesdale Mine and Shaft, preserving Champion No. 4 in many ways. Is really a thriving organization. But so ours here mainly focused on mining memorabilia in that case, but it also connects with family life at that time. You know, like what Donna's been talking or Janet's been talking, family life and businesses and more of your day-to-day activities surrounding the mines.
Fantastic.
So that's sort of the foundation. There was one of the society formulating it was a man named James Clark, who was in the class of 1928 at the Painesville High School. And he grew up in the shadow of that number 4 shaft house, and he just felt it had to be preserved, which it is.
Yep, that's fantastic. Thank you for that, Jean and Janet and Donna. Appreciate it. Now, I'd like to provide listeners with the contact information for the Society. You can find them on their website at pasty, P-A-S-T-Y, pasty.com/CRHM. Their email is copperrangehistoricalsociety@gmail.com, and you can find them on Facebook if you look for Copper Range Historical Museum. Their address is 44 Trimountain Avenue, P.O. Box 148, South Range, Michigan 49963, if you'd like to visit. That all sound right?
Yes.
Now, can you kindly share with the audience an overview of the communities you serve, the demographic makeup of your membership, and the mission and objectives of your society?
The communities we serve are in the southern Houghton County, and they aren't nearly as big as they used to be, the size of the towns. Even though the mines aren't active, people still enjoy living here. And so we're just glad that we have another activity for them to visit and to know that we are doing our best to preserve the history of the area that they're living in. Okay, our membership, it's a variety. We mail about 275 newsletters 3 times a year. And a lot of them are people that live in this general area, but a lot of them live all around the country. And so they must have some connection through family or having lived here at one time. I often wonder the same thing, and they go back for several decades. And so one of the objectives is that we have is that to try and encourage younger people to become members of our society. That's a goal that we're having because we've lost a lot because of age. And so right now we would like to get more younger people to join the society to show interest in our local history and what we have to offer. And so we're trying to find ways to reach out. We're encouraging current members to invite their families to join or pay a membership for that younger members of the family. And just we're trying to grow in that way.
Now, what's coming up on the horizon for the museum? Are there any upcoming exhibitions or events that the community should look forward to?
Jean here, we already had our open house, which is the Saturday before we open for the season. So this year it was on June 1st. That's when our special feature that day was logging history display. So then now the next event we have coming up is on July 10th, which is a Wednesday. We always have an annual member dinner and meeting. And so that's coming up on July 10th in the evening.
Nice.
And so we'll have a homemade dinner. One of our members likes to cook, so she offered to fix the meal. So we're having a pasta casserole and other wonderful food. And then we'll have a business meeting. It doesn't take real long. And then the program that evening that we're looking forward to, and we are inviting the public to come to the whole event, is the chief archivist at Michigan Tech. Her name is Lindsay Hiltonen. The title of her talk is very intriguing. It's called Youper Dogs at Work and at Play. So we're looking forward to hear what Lindsay has to say about Youper dogs, because I guess it's about dogs. And she had done this presentation for some other group last year. And Robin, one of our members, had asked her, would she be willing to be our speaker at our member meeting? And she said yes. So we're looking forward to hearing what Lindsay has to say. So 4th of July is always our biggest visitation day because South Range has a lot of activities going on, including a parade that's very popular with the area. And the parade starts at 2. And so we're open from 12 till maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock, whenever the last person leaves. But people come in here to help pass the time before the parade starts. So we get a lot of visitors before the parade. And then a lot of them will come in after the parade. And so that's why it's one big visitation day for us that we just are very happy about. Pretty much otherwise it's business as usual.
Oh, fantastic. Guys, being your area is all about copper mining, are there copper roofs and nuggets and other beautiful copper metal building embellishments all across the region?
There's a sandstone, which is, there's a lot of sandstone found in this area. And so a lot of the buildings, whether they're here in South Range or the high school in Painesdale, or you go through all the other towns, Houghton, Hancock, Calumet, you're going to see that the buildings are, a lot of them made from sandstone. And the sandstone has been mined from quarries in this area along Lake Superior. And then we also know that the copper used in the Statue of Liberty came from the Keweenaw Peninsula.
Oh, very cool. So you're right up there in the New York Harbor.
Yes, we are.
Very nice. Wow.
This is Janet, and I'd like to tell you, unfortunately, that one of our buildings that was a beautiful sandstone building ended up having to be torn down. But I'd like to tell you a little bit. This is a great history from in Painesdale. We were talking about Mr. Payne, who organized the Copper Range Company. And of course, they built many houses that were starting to be built in Painesdale. And back in 1900, there were 3,253 people in Painesdale. That was quite a bustling town. Now, when he became the president, this was the time that his mother passed. And her son's memorial was to be a library and community center built in Painesdale. And this same designer who built the Adams Township High School was chosen as to be the person who was going to design this library. And this was made up from the sandstone that was found again at Portage Entry, which was probably in Jacobsville. And so this library was just an astounding building for the time. It had 3 levels, and the basement had a kitchen, a dining room, and club rooms. And this was built in 1904. And this lower level was a great convenience for the miners because they had tubs that had an endless supply of hot and cold water that was supplied by the exhaust of the local mines. So several days of the week, the miners and the boys could sign up to use these tubs, and there was a special day for ladies and girls. And they were saying there were hundreds of baths that were recorded by the librarians who kept the records, which unfortunately were burnt when this closed down. So besides that, they had club rooms. The ladies' auxiliaries or aides from the churches used them. And they were wonderful places because there weren't churches up yet at the time. They had a charging desk with bookshelves behind, and they had books and languages from all of these different countries where we were talking about. And they also had wonderful art prints. And a children's room was there. And I used to go here to this library, and I bet you went too, Jean, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it was the one, and you did too, yes. And so there were window seats in the children's room with a wonderful sandstone fireplace. There was a smoking room and card room that was off from there. And then there was a main adult reading room that had periodicals from every language. The second floor auditorium was very, very famous because they had singers that came from all over. And some people said that they were more famous than the ones that were in the lower part of Michigan. They had debates that were held there and many theatrical performances. And one thing that was wonderful is that books were exchanged with the mine offices so that children and different people could read these books, because you could just imagine, with not having many books that ever came with you, that it was a wonderful idea to have them. This building was found to have had something that was wrong with its construction, and from what I read, there was one person who decided it needed to come down and it was destroyed. And really, we've heard stories that really it was just the roofing that needed replacing, but I can't prove that. Those are stories that I heard. So it's just very sad.
Yeah. What a loss. What a great community center.
It was.
Wow. And there was a wonderful picture there of Sarah, of his wife. His mother.
Yeah, this is Jean. And that picture, that picture of Sarah Sargent Payne is on display at the high school.
Yes.
Fantastic. Guys, we have to take a break. It's time to take a break again.
Oh.
Can't believe it.
Yeah.
It's going fast.
Yes.
I just love to listen to the history and your stories. It's just wonderful. Thank you for that. All right, listeners, we'll be right back.
Okay.
Do you love exploring the rich history of the Keweenaw Peninsula and Copper Country? Are you passionate about preserving the community's heritage? The Copper Range Historical Society and Museum in South Range invites you to become a member and to join in celebrating and protecting the fascinating stories of the region. Located at 44 Trimountain Avenue in South Range, the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum is a vibrant hub where history comes alive. From interactive exhibits and educational programs to engaging events, there's always something exciting happening, and they want you to be a part of it.
Joining the society has been amazing. I love learning about our local history and meeting others who share my passion.
As a member, you'll be joining a community of people who care deeply about our heritage and want to make a difference. Becoming a member is easy. Visit the website at pasty.com/CRHM to sign up online. You can also follow them on Facebook for updates on all the activities and events. And if you prefer to join in person, drop by the museum or send mail to P.O. Box 148, South Range, Michigan, 49963.
We're more than just a museum. We're a community dedicated to preserving and sharing our incredible history. Join us today and make a difference.
Membership with the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum means more than just benefits. It's a chance to connect with their past, contribute to the present, and inspire future generations. Whether you're a history buff, a community supporter, or someone looking to learn and grow, they have a place for you. Join them in their mission to keep the Keweenaw Peninsula and Copper Country's legacy shining bright. For more information, email them at copperrangehistoricalsociety@gmail.com or visit pasty.com/CRHM. They can't wait to welcome you to the family.
The Copper Range Historical Society and Museum, where your membership makes history. Join them today and be a part of something truly special.
There's a common phrase that's being kicked around in your house and mine more and more every day, and that is high cost of living. Sound familiar? I'll bet it does. I'm sure you've heard Mother and Dad mention it more often than once, and you will undoubtedly hear it many more times as the days go by. Now, just in case you're hazy on exactly what it means, let me give you a rough idea. It means that the cost of your clothes and food has gone up to a point where the family budget has become somewhat strained. Well, that's one of those things, and you can't be expected to increase the family income. But there are some things you can do to help. For instance, take better care of your clothes. When you come home from school, change into old clothes before you go out to play. Take care of your health, because doctors and medicines are expensive. Eat well, but don't waste. Take your full share, but eat all you take. Try not to ask Mother and Dad to buy you things you don't actually need. Make the best and the most of what you've got. Try to be more than usually careful of your school equipment, such as paper, pencils, and so forth. Make them last and go as far as you possibly can. Remember that all members of a family must pull together at a time like this. So do your share.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The management of this drive-in theater is happy to announce you can enjoy your favorite form of movie entertainment regardless of rain. No longer will it be necessary to let rain spoil your fun. Now you can keep your windshield clear and dry with a drizzle guard. Simply attach it to your windshield, and in a jiffy you're enjoying the movie without constantly running your windshield wipers. A drizzle guard will save you gasoline and wear and tear on your battery. After the show is over, all you do is take off your drizzle guard, roll it up, and it's ready to be used again, just like an umbrella. So next time it rains, Don't sizzle in a drizzle. Get yourself a Drizzle Guard and enjoy the show. Drizzle Guards are on sale now at the concession center.
And now, back to Preservation Oaks.
Welcome back to Preservation Oaks. We're here today with Jean Pemberton, Janet Kokko, and Donna Laux from the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum located on the Keweenaw Peninsula in South Range, Michigan. Guys, I'd like to thank you for your time today. I've been having such a great time and learning about the rich history of your area and the work you're doing to preserve your history. I hope everybody listening knows how important it is to support the Society and Museum. Now let's pick up where we left off. Welcome back. If your building were to catch fire, what things would you grab on the way out?
This is Jean. We have a set of the Polk directory for 1916 and 1917. We would grab that for sure. The railroad spike that we talked about earlier, we would grab that.
Yep, those are very practical things. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Now, the important part of the society and keeping it active is your funding. So what kind of funding model supports the society? What are your funding goals this year?
We're fortunate that we had some generous donations over the years. And so we've been able to have some CDs in the bank. Some of the other organizations, they have to struggle a lot more financially than we do. But we get donations from the public, whether it's someone's estate or just general donations. When people come in the door, we have a box for donations, which is the dollar entry fee or whatever. So we don't have any charitable trust or anything. We don't get money from any government-related organization. No, it's mainly from memberships and people, not just memberships, but they give memorials for a family or a friend memory, or if they are moved to give us money, well, we welcome it. We're very grateful.
All right. Thank you very much. What type of membership and membership levels are there?
Well, it's based on our membership form. We have individual memberships at $10 a year, family membership, $15 a year, supporting member, $50. It's a senior life member is $75. A life membership is $100. Should someone want to be a corporate sponsor of $1,000, that would be fine. But mostly it's the other memberships that I just listed.
Okay. And if people are writing out a check, they should make their checks payable to the Copper Range Historical Society?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. And they can mail that to the Copper Range Historical Society, P.O. Box 148, South Range, Michigan, 49963.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. And I hope you do. Folks, they're a great organization. They deserve your support. Now, I understand your society has some kind of specialized memorial plaques. What can you tell us about those?
As you enter the building, on the one wall, there's boards there that have names of people whose we have received donations from the family, the memorials, or they themselves have given an ample amount of donation. So those are memorial boards. And there's a lot of names on there, probably a couple hundred. But anyway, and then another award plaque we have is called the Robert Bergdahl Award. And that one was given each year to someone to honor for what they have contributed to the history, not just of the museum, but to the local area or history in general. But it's mainly focused on what they have contributed to local history and or to the society.
Oh, fantastic. And that's given annually?
Yes. Last year it was one of our docents, Dr. Ward Cole. He's a retired dentist. He's in his 90s, and he is such a faithful volunteer here, and he's very talkative and knows a lot of the area history. He grew up in Painesdale, so he's a very interesting person to talk to.
Okay, fantastic. I know you guys are always busy. That's the one thing that impressed me about your society and museum, and you and the volunteers are always doing something in the community. What kind of outreach and education does the society undertake within the community? Can you tell us about that?
This is Janet. Before COVID came, we would be doing the school train every year in the 4th grade, and we would ask the teacher if we could go in and do that with her class. And after COVID, we haven't been doing that, but I think we would like to start something to have children do some writing about history. You know, the Michigan history is very important, and I think if children were to come to the museum and do some studies about something that's here and look up information and share it with us, it would be wonderful. Oral history is really great. So I think that's something we could be thinking about.
Okay, fantastic. Yes. Now, does the society publish a newsletter?
Yes.
You mentioned it a couple of times that you have a circulation of about 200 or 300?
Yeah, about 275 or so. If we do that as part of your membership, we do one in February. The one in February includes an annual report, which would cover, like this past February, it covered the 2023 information, membership-wise and income-wise and everything. And and then in May and in November, that's when we have our newsletters. In May, it's just general articles, but it also includes the plans for the annual dinner in the summer. And then in November, we sort of talk about and recap the activities that we, in visitation or whatever we had during the course of the open season.
Does your newsletter have a name?
The Champion Line.
Oh, nice. Champion Line. Mm-hmm. Just like number 4?
Yes.
Yeah, that's very cool. Now, what kinds of records or historical artifacts has the Society recently received as donations from the public?
This is Jean. We've received sports trophies and uniforms from some of the ball teams that used to be very active, although there still are some ball teams, but this goes back into like the 40s and the 50s, 1940s and 50s. And so we have a couple of uniforms. Back in 1947, we have a baseball where the Detroit Tigers from that team were up here and played against some of the local teams. And so we have an autographed baseball on display from the famous players from that era of the Detroit Tigers. Yeah, and then we have, there was a watch repair here in town, well, 2 of them, I think they were brothers, I think. But anyway, one of the granddaughter, one of the watch repair people, we have 2 books of thick volume of family research that she did. And then this summer, a person brought in some ledgers from the watch repair business. And so we have some ledgers from, I think this would be her grandfather's brother, who they were 2 brothers, they had watch repairs near each other. So we got ledgers like that. And we're just getting offers of other donations that we haven't received yet.
Oh, very cool. What kinds of volunteer opportunities does the Society have for members in the public?
Volunteer on the board, volunteer during our open hours. Some of our board members also volunteer during open hours, but we have a few others that every summer they come back, and we're scheduling for July now to get volunteers. Because when we advertise that we're going to be open, we have to do our very best that we're going to be open.
Right, understood. Volunteers are really the heart of your society. Keep it running, especially when you have events, right?
Yes. And 4th of July, there's usually a few of us here, even if not the whole time. But when it's busy, we would like to have people be able to chat with the visitors. And of course, we would always welcome volunteers that would be knowledgeable, tech savvy to help us. And if they would like to help with our storage upstairs, our organizing and everything, we would find things for them to do.
Oh, fantastic. So you've got opportunities and you need volunteers. That's fantastic. I hope people listening will volunteer. And how does someone volunteer? Do they just contact the museum?
Yes, they can call our museum number and leave a message because people aren't here all the time. They can. Probably the best way to reach us would be our email address.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, how does the society interface with other state, county, and regional organizations?
We are a Keweenaw Heritage Site, one of 22 heritage sites of the Keweenaw National Historical Park. And so we enhance the story of what the park has to offer. They're based in Calumet. They're part of the Department of Interior, but their territory only involves Calumet and Hecla, former Calumet and Hecla Copper Mines Company, and the one in Quincy Mine in Hancock. So those are what are designated sites for them with the Department of Interior. And so the copper story is, there's so much to contribute to that. So that's why there's 22 heritage sites, of which we're one. Painesville Mine and Shaft is one. And in many of the area local towns, there are museums that in other organizations, a bed and breakfast, or in Houghton County Museum in Lake Linden, they have a lot to offer. The Michigan Tech Archives, so that's another place where we can refer people if we can't answer their questions here. Finnish American Society in Hancock, and there's other heritage sites that we can refer people to. And we are members of the Historical Society of Michigan, which is based in Lansing. And so we provide articles to them off and on. And then we're also members of an organization called Uplink, which is relatively new in the last few years. It's based out of Northern Michigan University in Marquette. And they formed with a grant to provide research information online to the world for small museums all across the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, not just here in the Keweenaw, but all across so many little towns, and so many of them have their own little museums, and they can't afford to be getting into the technology or anything. So they provide information to this uplink in Marquette, and then they in turn are putting it so that it's available for researchers online.
Oh, fantastic. That's a great service. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Nice partnerships.
Yes.
I'd like to provide listeners with the contact information for the society. Their website is www.pasti.com/CRHM. Their email is copperrangehistoricalsociety@gmail.com. You can find them on Facebook as Copper Range Historical Museum. And their address is 44 Trimountain Avenue, P.O. Box 148, South Range, Michigan 49963. Now, what kind of things are available to do on your society's website?
The website itself, this is Jean. The website, it has a lot of old pictures. A lot of them are some of the displays here at the museum. There's a membership form is on there if you would like to print it off of there and mail it to us. We do not sell anything on the website. In fact, we don't really sell anything. Only thing you might find that you can buy at the museum here is some cookbooks from the Painesville Mine and Shaft. It's a really nice cookbook, very ethnic related. But any money that comes for that cookbook, we give to Painesville Mine and Shaft. It is not our money at all. Other than that, we just take donations, whether it's check or cash. As of right now, we are on Facebook. Maybe someday we'll get into donations or membership online. We are not equipped to do that at this point.
Okay. So no PayPal or anything like that right now?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if people want to donate to the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum, they can write out a check to Copper Range Historical Society and mail it to P.O. Box 148, South Range, Michigan 49963.
Right. This is Jean. You can say we're old school.
Ah, that's fine. And if you want to become a member at the same time with that donation check, send them your membership. An individual membership is $10 a year. Family membership is $15 a year. Supporting membership is $50 a year. Senior life member is $75. Life membership is $100, and corporate sponsor is $1,000.
Yes.
You mentioned young talent and skills, and you're trying to recruit younger folks with technical skills that you need. How are you trying to attract young talent and skills in your volunteer pool?
We contacted the Jeffers High School because they're closest by here. And so we just keep hoping to get some feedback at maybe some young teenagers in high school that would really have an interest in history and that they would like to participate somehow with our society. We would welcome them. We would certainly find things for them to do and also volunteer at the museum. And then at Michigan Tech, there is places we can contact about maybe helping us research something that we would like to have them look into. I know one thought I have is to see if we can find a student who would be interested in researching our building, South Range State Bank, and the history of it, and come up with some information that we could put together as a booklet or something. So and then any other things that the board or anyone has suggestions that we can pursue.
Okay. And that's one of your current initiatives. Are there any other current initiatives or needs of the society that you want the people of your area to know about and support?
Like I said, encourage them to become a tourist in their own town.
Yeah, I like that. I like that saying. That's very nice.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about how best to keep history and community support flourishing for the current generation, the K through 12 kids?
I think by sharing stories with the kids, that it would be very important. I'd like to tell stories, and I'm sure there's many, many books that are out there that we can share stories with, but even to go and tell the children about the towns. I was doing research with all these little towns, and we could have had an easy program. That would have been wonderful, because with the kids living in these little towns, they would know where the places are that we're talking about. And so who knows? There's many opportunities.
Absolutely. It sounds like a wonderfully historically rich area which you can mine for all kinds of opportunities.
Yes.
Now, why is the society important to the community, and what makes your organization different or unique from others?
Well, it's a unique opportunity, something different for them, for people to visit, not only visit, but just to know that it's in our town, and that when they get company, this is a place that they can come to do something with, just to look around. It's important for the people in the area to know that something is being done to preserve the history of the area.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for that, Jean. Now, do you guys do any consulting or genealogical research service for members and non-members?
Just in recent years, we've been getting more requests when people are doing research. When we are contacted, lately it's been more on email than anything, that the board members will provide input or respond to the people with what they're aware of, or refer them to maybe a local church or any whatever the request has to do with. So we just, if we can't find, the Polk directory here is really a valuable source when people are looking into their family trees and everything. Otherwise, if we can't answer a question, we'll take their name and address and see if we can find an answer. Otherwise, we refer them to the Michigan Tech Archives, the Finnish American Center in Hancock, and the Keweenaw National Historical Park, which does a wonderful job of their archives. Houghton County Historical Society in Lake Linden, which has been around a lot longer than we have. Ontonagon has a good museum there with a lot of history. So we just try and refer requests elsewhere. At least we get back to them, so at least we can acknowledge that their request.
Yeah, you guys have all the knowledge and the contacts of all of the places around the areas to help people out. That's great.
This is Janet. We also have people that have been interested in knowing where their relatives might be buried in the cemeteries that are around here. And we've been able to give them information from Adams Township, the cemetery, which is here, and people have been able to locate some of their relatives.
Fantastic. Thank you, Janet. Now, this is an off-the-wall question, but I have been asking this question of my guests recently because I want to do a special episode on what the world will look like in 100 years. I'd like to know from each of you, what do you think the world will look like in 100 years?
This is Jean. I can hardly imagine the way that technology has evolved to where it is in this day and age. You think that everything that can ever be learned or done has already happened, but it doesn't. Just knowing how things have changed within our lifetime. And so it's just hard to imagine them maybe living more in space than they are right now. I have no idea.
This is Donna, and I go along with Jean. I can't imagine, because in our lifetimes, we've seen things that we didn't dream. I grew up without television. Our first phone was a crank phone. And now look what we do on the computers. So it's what it's going to be in the future, I can't even imagine.
Great.
I look back on my parents and grandparents saying that to travel years ago on the roads here, it would go 25 miles, it would probably take you hours because they were bumpy and lumpy. Now look how we travel. So I can't imagine. I hope it's a happy, wonderful world.
Yes.
And this is Janet, and I'm hoping that the world will be closer together, that we can know about people that live elsewhere and be closer together with them. And I always have concerns thinking about what the climate is going to be like and what changes will be and who will be living where. It's mind-boggling. So I think we have to enjoy each of our days that we have.
Yep, that's a very good point, Janet. Thank you. Thank you, Donna.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other information or any message you'd like the community or members to know about?
Yes, there is one, Sean. This is Donna. We have a wonderful miniature display here of the logging industry. And the logging industry was tied into the copper industry as well. We still have a viable logging industry here because this is the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and it's not that populated. Growing up in Duncan, which I have mentioned briefly, that was a lumbering logging town. My father had his own lumbering and logging business a short distance away from Duncan. I didn't know till today that Jean's father was also in that logging business. But in the town I grew up in, there was probably 8 homes there. And when I was very young, I had 2 friends to play with. And then we found out that there was going to be homes coming into town. The Vulcan Corporation was coming in. And they built homes as the mining company did. They built homes in Duncan. And so this was an exciting time because we were now going to have playmates. And in that town, there were cook shanties for the lumberjacks, as we called them. There were bunkhouses for the lumberjacks. They built a community building. We had a church built. As kids, we weren't supposed to, but we often would sneak down and play on those lumber piles, which gave you a few slivers. And we didn't get caught, that we were lucky. I remember the school bus, we would go right through the mill proper. And they used horses. Eventually they became tractors, but for most of the time they had been using horses to skid the logs and work in those lumber yards, and as well as in the woods. I also lived long enough to see in the 60s that mill was completely closed. And I believe there are 6 houses left in Duncan now. They were moved, sold, moved, some burned, whatever, but they're gone. It's a ghost town now. But if you look back also on the early mining here, Houghton, we're close to Houghton and Hancock. And Houghton and Hancock is separated with a portage canal, a waterway, which is covered by a bridge. And they are our closest cities, Houghton and Hancock now. But if you see at older pictures, when the mines were being developed, there wasn't a tree or a log left on those hills. They're now habitated, but there's homes and there's vegetation back. But they used the logs and lumbering back then in the mining. They used it to help shore up the underground in the attics.
Yeah, the tunnels.
They built, right. Yes. They used them. They needed those logs. They built railroad tracks. They had to have the wood for the railroad tracks. The trestles, the ties. Yeah. They were used for fuel. And of course, they built all these homes and they needed wood for all this. So logging was and still is an industry here that was a big part of the development of this area. And my part of being with that was interesting. One thing I have to tell you about Donkin, when I went off to Northern Michigan, when it wasn't a university then, it was a college. And it was 1957, and we didn't, of course, have computers. And the townspeople would come and help to enroll the freshmen. And I stood in line, and when I got there, this gentleman, nice suit on, tie, older, gray-haired, and he said, "You're from Donkin?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, my father named that town. His last name was Case." And he said, "My brother's name was Donald and Kenneth. And so they named it Donkin." His dad did.
Oh my!
And that was the very first sawmill that was in Donkin. But when I was growing up, it was the Vulcan Corporation and Consolidated. And that's my story.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Jean, Janet, and Donna, I want to thank you for hanging out with us today. It was super cool to hear all the amazing stories and information about your area, the society, and the museum. You folks are doing some incredible work in the community. Meeting you has been really exciting, and it's awesome to see how much your society are rocking it for everyone around Copper Country and the Keweenaw Peninsula. Keep being awesome, and thank you.
This is Janet. This is a wonderful opportunity to share our place where we live and love with others. So thank you for inviting us to do this.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
All right, and with that, we'll end our time with our guests, Jean Pemberton, Janet Kokko, and Donna Laux from the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum located on the Keweenaw Peninsula in South Range, Michigan. Listeners, please stay tuned for my comments and wrap-up, which is coming up next. Welcome back. As we draw this enlightening episode to a close, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the incredible journey we've just embarked on with our distinguished guests from the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum. Today we were honored to host Jean Pemberton, Janet Kokko, and Donna Laux, three remarkable individuals whose dedication, intelligence, and reflective knowledge have truly illuminated the rich tapestry of life in the Copper Range region. Nestled in South Range, Michigan, the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum stands as a beacon of history and culture in the heart of Copper Country. The passion and commitment of Jean, Janet, and Donna to preserving and sharing the stories of their area are nothing short of inspiring. These stories not only highlight the unique beauty of the Copper Range, but also underscore its significant contributions to the broader narrative of our nation. Jean Pemberton poignantly reminded us of the importance of local engagement with her heartfelt words, We want people to know that we are here and that they can and should become tourists in their own hometown. Come for a visit, donate, and volunteer. It's a call to action for all of us to reconnect with our roots, to explore the treasures in our backyard, and to support the institutions that safeguard our collective heritage. Our discussion today spanned a diverse array of topics, each shedding light on different facets of the Copper Range's storied past. We've delved into the rich immigrant roots of the area, with Jean, Janet, and Donna sharing their Cornish, Croatian, Yugoslav, English, and Finnish ancestries. These vibrant cultures have interwoven over the years, contributing to the rich and multifaceted identity of Copper Country. Janet's recounting of the history of Adams Township High School, now known as Jeffers High School, built in 1907 in Painesdale, which is listed on the National Historic Register, provided a glimpse into the educational and architectural heritage of the region. She also transported us back in time with the tale of the railway built in 1903, which hosted the unique school train, the only one of its kind in the United States, serving as a daily lifeline for the children of Copper Country. We also explored the vital roles that women played in this early mining-dominated area. Amidst the grueling work of the mines, it is the women who brought refinement, religion, and culture to Copper Country. They are the bedrock upon which the community's social fabric is woven, nurturing the development of the region in countless ways. The museum itself is a testament to this rich heritage, housing a remarkable collection of artifacts that tell the story of life in the Copper Range, from historic mining and railroad memorabilia to everyday items like an old washing machine and a 300-pound clump of float copper. The museum offers a tangible connection to the past. The loom for carpet making, children's items, an old sewing machine, and sports memorabilia provide further windows into the daily lives and cultural vibrancy of the community. Not to mention the spirited polka music that once echoed through the halls, a nod to the area's musical heritage. Jean, Janet, and Donna also highlighted the year-round allure of Copper Country. With its breathtaking landscapes and a wealth of historical sites, the region attracts thousands of tourists annually, even more so in the winter than in summer. The area's transformation from a mining hub to a vibrant center for tourism, tech, and timber industries is a testament to its resilience and adaptability. Ethnic celebrations are a cornerstone of life in the Copper Range. From the January Finnish Festival in Hancock that breaks the back of winter, to the bonfires of St. John's Day in midsummer and the lively Finn Fest, the community's spirit and heritage are celebrated with joy and pride. These festivities not only honor the past, but also forge connections within the community and with visitors from near and far. As we've learned today, the Copper Range Historical Society, founded circa 1988-89, is more than just a museum. It's a cornerstone of the community, dedicated to preserving and sharing the stories of Copper Country. Every donation, every volunteered hour, and every membership helps sustain this vital mission. In their quest to keep the history of the Copper Range alive, Jean, Janet, and Donna are reaching out to younger generations, inviting them to join the society and bring fresh energy and new skills to their efforts. Whether through maintaining displays, bringing technical skills, organizing events, or creating innovative exhibits, there are countless ways for young people to get involved and contribute. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to Jean, Janet, and Donna. Their stories have enriched us, their dedication has inspired us, and their invitation to become tourists in our own hometown has resonated deeply. We were indeed lucky to spend this time with them and to gain a deeper appreciation for the history and heritage of the Copper Range. To our listeners, I urge you to support the Copper Range Historical Society and Museum. Visit the museum, donate, volunteer, and become a member. Your contributions are crucial in helping preserve this irreplaceable slice of Michigan and American history. Whether it's financial support, time, or talent, your involvement can make a significant difference. Together, let's help the Copper Range Historical Society continue to tell the important stories of this area and its people. Let's celebrate the past, honor the present, and build a future where the legacy of the Copper Range continues to shine brightly. One last time, I'd like to provide listeners with the contact information for the Society. Their website is www.pasti.com/CRHM. Their email is copperrangehistoricalsociety@gmail.com. You can find them on Facebook at Copper Range Historical Museum. Their address is 44 Trimountain Avenue, P.O. Box 148, South Range, Michigan 49963. All right, if questions occur to you and you'd like more information, please connect with the Society via the contact information provided. If you're a listener in the area the Society serves and you're not already a member, please consider joining and supporting them. I hope this information helps the audience understand how valuable the Society is to the community and what kinds of excellent services they have to offer to their members and the public. The Copper Range Historical Society and Museum, located in South Range, Michigan, is truly one of our nation's preservation oaks. All right, that's a wrap for this episode. Music used today is from Cymbalbird, Labarsky, Studio Columna, B. Crutchfield, Pink Zebra, Gentle Jammers, Vision Studios, Orchestralis, and Scott Holmes. Microstream Radio is a registered trademark. You can visit us at www.microstreamradio.com. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted by Microstream Radio. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere without the written permission of Microstream Radio. I'm Sean Radcliff, and you've been listening to Preservation Oaks. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends. Thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned for more fascinating insights and stories in our next episode. Until then, keep on giving and keep on living the good life.